The radio crackled at 11:47 p.m. Sergeant Dale Kowalski was on his third cup of bad coffee, filling out incident reports at the Harrow County Sheriff's substation when the dispatch came through. He almost didn't hear it over the hiss of the heating unit fighting to keep the room above 50 degrees. All units. Missing persons report. Female, 7 years old. Last seen at approximately 9:15 p.m. near Ridgeline Road and Cutter's Pass. Name is Mia Valens. She was wearing a red coat. Dale was already on his feet before the dispatcher finished the sentence. A 7-year-old. Red coat. Outside. In this. He glanced at the window. The glass was completely white. Not frosted, not fogged, but white. A solid wall of snow driving sideways under a wind that had been howling since sundown. The temperature outside was 11 degrees Fahrenheit. With wind chill, it felt like -8. The forecast said it would drop further before morning. Dale grabbed his jacket off the hook and looked across the room at the kennel door. "Rex," he said quietly. "We're going." There was a shuffle, a soft whine, and then the sound of nails on concrete. The Belgian Malinois appeared in the doorway of the kennel room. 70 pounds of compact muscle, amber eyes wide and already alert. Rex had been asleep 60 seconds ago. Now he looked like he'd been waiting for this moment all day. That was the thing about Rex. He always looked like he'd been waiting. Dale had been partnered with Rex for 4 years. In that time, the dog had found a drowned man beneath 12 feet of river water, located an elderly woman with dementia hiding in a barn 3 miles from her home, and once, in a moment Dale still told people about at the dinner table, sat perfectly still in a courtroom while a defense attorney spent 40 minutes trying to rattle him on the stand. Rex had simply watched the man with those amber eyes, calm as a stone. He was not a dramatic animal. He didn't bark unnecessarily. He didn't lunge. He worked with a quiet, almost eerie focus that newer handlers sometimes found unsettling. But tonight, from the moment Dale clipped the lead and walked him out into the parking lot, something was different. Rex pulled toward the dark immediately. Not the frantic pulling of an eager dog, something more purposeful. His nose dropped, then lifted, sweeping the air in quick arcs. His ears flattened slightly against his skull, which in Rex meant not fear but concentration. The same face he made when a scent hit him hard. Dale had to lean back against the leash with his full weight just to get Rex into the patrol truck. "Easy," Dale said. "Easy, boy." Rex looked at him once, then faced forward through the windshield. Ridgeline Road wound up the eastern face of Harrow Mountain for about 4 miles before it dead-ended at an old forestry access gate. In summer, local families drove up there for picnics. In winter, it was closed to the public. A single-lane strip of crumbling asphalt buried under ice and drifting snow that no sane person attempted after October. The Valens family had been coming down from their cabin at the end of that road when their car slid off the shoulder and buried itself hood-deep in a snowbank. The parents were uninjured. Their son, age 9, had a cut on his forehead. Mia, age 7, had been in the back seat. By the time the parents got both doors open and both adults and the boy out of the car, Mia was gone. They assumed she'd followed them out the driver's side. She hadn't. Somehow, in the chaos, the dark, the screaming wind, she had climbed out the other door and walked away from the car into a forest she had never been in at night, in a blizzard, alone. That had been 2.5 hours ago. Dale pulled up to the scene just after midnight. 3 other units were already there. A state trooper named Briggs was organizing a foot search with flashlights. A fire department volunteer named Gus was setting up a thermal imaging unit that kept freezing in the cold. The girl's father, Marcus Valens, was standing in the road in his shirt sleeves, shaking so badly Dale couldn't tell if it was cold or terror. Probably both. Dale got out of the truck and immediately opened the rear door for Rex. The dog hit the snow and his entire body changed. His nose went down and stayed down, dragging along the surface of the snow in fast, urgent sweeps. His tail, usually a slow, steady wag when working, was stiff and horizontal. He moved in a tight circle around the overturned car, then stopped, then looked up the mountain. "You got something?" Dale said quietly. Rex didn't look at him. He was already pulling north, up the embankment, toward the tree line. The forest above Ridgeline Road was second-growth pine. Dense, dark, the canopy close enough together that the snow came down in clumps rather than flakes beneath the trees. Visibility dropped to about 15 feet. The wind was muffled here, but the cold was, if anything, worse. Trapped between the trunks, still and deep and absolute. Dale followed Rex on a 6-foot lead. Behind him came Briggs and 2 volunteers. Gus stayed with the thermal unit at the road. Marcus Valens tried to follow, and Briggs firmly told him to stay with his wife and son at the fire truck. They moved in silence except for the crunch of snow and the occasional grunt of someone catching a root or a rock hidden beneath the white. Rex moved without hesitation. That was the thing that always got Dale. Other dogs zigzagged when working a cold trail, backtracked, lost confidence. Rex moved like he was following a line drawn on a map. His nose down, then up, then down again, but always moving forward, always in the same direction, reading something in the air that none of the humans around him could perceive. They went uphill for 20 minutes. Then Rex stopped. He stood completely still in the dark, nose raised, reading the wind. Dale watched him, hand tight on the leash, breath fogging in front of his face. Behind him he could hear Briggs breathing hard from the climb. Rex turned 45 degrees to the left. Then he sat down. "What does that mean?" Briggs asked quietly. "It means he's found the direction," Dale said. "He's not on ground scent anymore. He's got airborne. She's somewhere that way." He pointed into the dark between the trees. Briggs shone his flashlight. Nothing. Just black trunks and white ground going back until it blurred into shadow. Rex stood up. He looked at Dale. Then he looked back into the dark. Then he looked at Dale again. "I know," Dale said. "Let's go." They had been moving through the forest for another 10 minutes when the terrain changed. The ground sloped away sharply to the left, dropping toward what Dale knew, from the county maps he'd studied on the drive up, was a seasonal creek bed. In summer, it was 6 inches of water over smooth rock. In winter, it was a frozen corridor about 12 feet wide, lined with ice-covered stones and dead brush, running along the base of the mountain like a scar. Rex began moving faster. Dale struggled to keep up, his boots punching through the crust of the snow with every step. The leash went taut. Rex was nearly pulling him now, dragging him through a gap between 2 pines that Dale had to turn sideways to fit through. "Rex, Rex." The dog pulled harder. And then something happened that, in 4 years, Dale had never experienced. The leash broke. Not the metal clasp. The nylon webbing itself, weakened from the cold or worn from the constant tension, simply tore, and Rex was free. For one fraction of a second, the dog looked back. His amber eyes caught the beam of Dale's flashlight. Bright, certain, alive with something Dale could only describe later as urgency. And then he turned and he ran. He ran hard. Not the frantic scramble of a dog that had gotten loose. He ran the way a dog runs when it has somewhere specific to be. Low to the ground, powerful, straight, disappearing between the tree trunks so fast that within 3 seconds the darkness had swallowed him completely. Dale stood frozen. Behind him, Briggs and the 2 volunteers came crashing through the trees and stopped. Nobody moved. The wind moved through the pines above them with a long, low moan. The snow fell in clumps. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, a branch cracked under the weight of the ice. And then they heard it. A cry. Not a bark. Not a howl. Something in between, high and sharp and cutting through the cold like a blade, rising and then falling, the sound of an animal calling across a distance, the sound of an animal that had found what it was looking for and was saying, "Here, here, come here." Dale ran. He didn't think about the terrain or the ice or the slope. He ran toward the sound the way you run toward a fire alarm in the dark. Instinct first, body second, brain somewhere far behind trying to catch up. He broke through the tree line and skidded down the bank of the frozen creek and nearly fell, catching himself on a birch trunk with one gloved hand. And then he saw them. Rex was lying flat in the snow, curled against him. Tucked into the hollow created by his chest and his front legs, her red coat almost invisible against his dark fur, was a little girl. She was unconscious, but she was breathing. They learned later from the hypothermia specialist at Harrow County Medical that Mia Valens had approximately 12 to 15 minutes left when Rex found her. Her core temperature had dropped to 90.1 degrees Fahrenheit. She was in stage 2 hypothermia, shivering had stopped, which in a child is a dangerous sign. She was unresponsive, but her airway was clear. Rex had lain across her, covering as much of her body as he could with his own. His body temperature, a dog runs at 101 to 102.5 degrees normally, had been creating a pocket of warmth around her in the snow. The investigators would later calculate that in the 12 minutes between when Rex found her and when Dale reached the creek bed, the dog's body heat had likely slowed the drop in Mia's temperature by as much as 3 degrees. 3 degrees. In hypothermia, 3 degrees is the distance between a recovery and a funeral. Dale knelt in the snow beside them. He put 2 fingers to Mia's neck and felt a pulse, thin, slow, but steady. "She's alive," he said. His voice came out strange. He hadn't meant it to sound like that, like something breaking and holding at the same time. Briggs was already on the radio. The volunteers were pulling the emergency thermal blanket from the kit. Gus, at the base of the road with the thermal unit, would later say he saw the heat signatures, one large, one small, clustered together at the creek and started running before Briggs even called it in. Through all of it, Rex didn't move from Mia's side. He allowed Dale to peel him back just far enough for the volunteers to wrap her. He stood over her while they worked, head down, watching her face with those amber eyes. When the stretcher came and the paramedics lifted her, he walked beside it down the mountain. Not pulling, not rushing, just beside her, all the way to the ambulance at the road. Marcus Valens collapsed to his knees in the snow when he saw the red coat. His wife made a sound that no one who heard it that night ever fully forgot. People would ask Dale for years afterward, how did the dog know? How did he know to break free? How did he know she was there? Dale's answer was always the same, and it was always honest. I don't know. What he knew was this: Rex had been trained for 500 hours in scent tracking. He had been conditioned to follow a trail to its source, to indicate location, to wait for his handler. Every protocol said to stay on leash, to work the scent in a controlled pattern, to alert and hold. Every protocol. And Rex had thrown them all away. Not out of confusion. Not out of fear. Out of something that Dale, who had spent 22 years in law enforcement and was not a sentimental man by nature, could only describe as a decision. A choice. The dog had looked at him, and in the half-second before he disappeared into the dark, something had passed between them that Dale felt but could not name. I have to go now. You can't keep up. Trust me. Mia Valens spent 4 days in the hospital and made a complete recovery. On the afternoon she was discharged, her parents brought her to the sheriff's substation on Caldwell Street. She walked through the door in a yellow sweater, her dark hair in 2 braids, a small stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. Rex was lying on his bed in the kennel room. He raised his head when the door opened. Mia walked straight to him. Not cautiously, not shyly, the way you might expect a child to approach a large working dog, but directly, with the absolute confidence of someone who already knew this animal, who had already spent 12 minutes pressed against his chest in the dark and the cold, and who understood, in whatever wordless way a 7-year-old understands things, that this was the heartbeat she'd fallen asleep to. She sat down on the floor beside him. Rex put his head in her lap. Neither of them moved for a long time. Dale stood in the doorway and watched and said nothing, because there was nothing to say. Outside, the last of the season's snow was melting off the roof in long silver drops, catching the afternoon light on the way down, bright as anything.